Good afternoon, everybody. This is another edition of the Past 12 Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. A little bit of audio issues, as usual, here on the Past 12 Show. A ton of stuff we're going to get into. We're going to talk about a couple baseball teams and their push towards the postseason and some different perspectives involved in that. I'm going to talk about the NFL a little bit. We're also going to get into some stuff going on with sports betting in our Nobody's Listening segment. So a lot of stuff we're going to discuss today. Just a reminder, as always, feel free to comment on the Facebook or Periscope feed. Anything that's on your mind in the world of baseball, sports, and unifying America, we'll always get into. Wanted to start the show today by talking a little baseball, because we've hit pretty much the last home stretch of the season. You obviously got the month of August where there's still possibilities in regards to what we could expect to see as far as trades that can happen. You know, we can see some deals happening before the end of August as teams try to fortify their rosters, get themselves in the best position possible to make a run in the postseason. In addition, you know, you got some teams that are going to try to figure out whether it really is worth it. You take the shot and go for it this year. And a couple teams that stand out in that perspective to me are the Braves and the Phillies. You look at the National League East, the way it's set up, and there's many people that would not have expected the National League East to come down to the Phillies and the Braves. In fact, if we're going to start the offseason kind of doing let's say 2017 offseason going into 2018 and trying to verify what teams we expected to see make a serious run, we figure it was going to be the Washington Nationals division to win or lose. And that's a big thing, because the Nationals, in what I felt and a lot of other people felt were a very top-heavy National and American League, are nowhere to be found right now. And it's not that it's over for the Washington Nationals. I think, you know, we're expecting, you know, the Nationals to go out there and win, 20 out of 25. You know, you'd realize that's probably their only chance of really making a legitimate run and maybe winning the National League East division. Now, very few people, and I'm sure there's a couple people out there, because people like to, come up with different type of projections and maybe base some different information off of what they want to be their, the real thesis of what they're talking about. So there are people out there that may have thought that the New York Mets could win the NL East. There are people that may have believed in their heart of hearts that the Philadelphia Phillies or Atlanta Braves could have made a run in the National League East. Now, putting all logic in there, using the most amount of conventional wisdom possible, he broke down the 2018 Washington Nationals and realized that this is a team that probably is on its last run. Bryce Harper's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Is there a chance he comes back there? Maybe. It's a possibility, but it's unlikely. You look at Daniel Murphy, who's a free agent. Gio Gonzalez is a free agent. Odds are the 2019 Washington Nationals are going to look a lot different than the 2018 Washington Nationals. Maybe they have a plan. Maybe they could set themselves to where they could be very competitive and potentially make a run in 2019 and be at the level that they've been over the last 5 or 6 seasons. But the expectation was this was going to be the year that the Washington Nationals made a run at it. And obviously their big bugaboo has been getting past the first round, getting past the divisional series, which they haven't done in the 4 times they've made the playoffs in the last 7 seasons. So that's been an issue for them. But the expectation is they were going to have a chance to do it. They were going to have a chance to finally get over that hump. But now you look at the Atlanta Braves and you look at the Philadelphia Phillies, and I'll tell you, going back for the past 2 years, and I rewind, I jump back in my DeLorean, and I go back to the offseason of 2016. And I was thinking, the Washington Nationals are a very good team. There's no question about it. They had won the division in 2016, were expected to win the division again in 2017. But I was looking at the development of the Philadelphia Phillies and their farm system, and the same thing with the Atlanta Braves, knowing that both of these teams were in a good position to improve. And if things started to work right, if some of the younger players started to impact the major league team a little bit earlier than expected, both of the teams could be in a mix. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I analyzed this a lot then. This is going back into 2016 offseason. And I was trying to figure out what would have to happen for both the Philadelphia Phillies and the Atlanta Braves to be good, with the Washington Nationals still being at the level that they're at, with the New York Mets, who, by the way, 2016 offseason, nobody or very few people were anticipating the fall of that franchise and where they sit right now. So you're thinking Nationals, Mets, but also trying to figure out a way to incorporate the Braves and the Phillies, and to think all four of those teams potentially finishing with an over 500 record in the same season. Obviously, the Marlins being where they are, and remember, the Marlins didn't start tanking or didn't start selling off players until the 2017 offseason. So in the National League East, you still had to factor the Miami Marlins, who may not have been a favorite or may not have been a team that could considerably be considered a legitimate postseason possibility. And I want to say hello to Albert. Throws a comment here. How's everything going? Looking at it from this perspective, so 4 teams in the NL East, I'm envisioning all being competitive at the same time. And it's hard to do because, you look at the National League East, you understand that every division you play 19 regular season games against each one of your division rivals. So if you have 4 teams that are finishing over 500, obviously it's going to be a top-heavy division. You look at the NL Central, you look at the NL West, there are very good teams there. You got the Cubs and the Brewers and the Pirates and the Cardinals. And then you got the NL West with the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks and the Rockies. So you've got a series of very good baseball teams that if you're going to finish 500, you're going to have to win games against somebody. And to win games against somebody, have a winning record means somebody's going to have a losing record. In the end, there's exactly as many wins as there are losses in Major League Baseball. It's just, like that with professional sports. Somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. Not everybody can have a tremendous season where there are a ridiculous amount of games above 500. So I was trying to figure out how it was possible, and a couple of people that were in my inner circle were kind of shooting down my idea that both of these teams could be good in the same year. Now, I'm not Nostradamus. I'm not sitting here saying that I predicted that both the Braves and Phillies would be in the position that they are this year, but I thought it was a possibility going into 2017. So I carried that forward and said, hey, it's a possibility, it's a chance, it could happen, but I was still predicting the Nationals to be the Nationals. And if you heard my analysis, and you heard a lot of baseball people's analysis coming into this season, we're looking at a very top-heavy league because the very good teams were stuck to a group of about 7 or 8, and they seem to be so superior to the rest of Major League Baseball. And then there's another group of 7 or 8 teams that were equally as bad, that weren't even trying. We're talking about the Mar Rays coming into the season. Now listen, the Rays have gone out there and they've overperformed. They've gotten the most out of the limited talent that they've got. So I give them credit for it, absolutely. I'm not a fan of the Rays. I'm not a fan of the way that they do business. I don't like the fact that they don't invest in their own players, but they have their own philosophy and it works. But going back to my point, you have the top-heavy teams and the bottom-heavy teams. I was looking at the NL, and I wasn't being crazy by saying Nationals, Cubs, Dodgers, maybe Diamondbacks, maybe Rockies. And in the AL, I'm thinking Red Sox, Yankees, Astros, Indians. And if those teams, on paper, with the amount of talent that they have, were so much superior to that of a lot of other teams in Major League Baseball. So that's why I kind of backed off of my ideas of the Phillies and Braves making a run this year, because I had a little bit of hope for the Mets. And I expected the Nationals to be a lot better than they are right now. But what the Phillies and Braves both bring to the table is a lot of youthful energy and a good leadership. Now, Brian Snitker, who's the manager of the Atlanta Braves, is not getting anywhere near as much credit as he deserves. He took that team together when Freddie Gonzalez was fired and seemed to get something out of them in 2016. Now, last year was a disappointing season. I understand you want to, magnify things even more. You can talk about the turmoil that's gone on in the front office there with John Coppolella, their general manager, being banned for life for things that he was doing, violations and the international spending stuff, which ended up getting him kicked out of baseball. John Hart, who's leading the organization to hopefully some prominence, ends up stepping down. So the Braves had their own turmoil to deal with. So you could add that in to what they're doing this year and give them a lot of credit. And I look at the Phillies and I say the Phillies are good for this reason. That they have very good young pitching. Aaron Nola has become one of the stars of the game, certainly a Cy Young candidate. Nick Pivetta has pitched very well. If he hasn't been 100% consistent, he's been good. And then I throw in some other, things that have worked out for them. Zach Eflin has pitched well. Obviously, Arrieta has been Arrieta. Vince Velasquez has become the pitcher that he was supposed to be a couple of years ago when he was acquired in that Mark Peltry. And the Phillies have gone out there and they've made moves like a legitimate postseason contending team. They traded for Asdrubal Cabrera. They traded for Justin Bourne. They traded for Aaron Luke. I know none of these names are superstars. You're not talking about Mike Trout and Bryce Harper and, Aroldis Chapman being acquired at the same time. But they're the type of moves that are made by a team that's making a run for the postseason. I don't think the Braves nor the Phillies are going to take a step back and say, hey, if we don't make the playoffs, it's okay. So you've got a old-fashioned pennant race in the National League East, just not with the teams that you expected. Now, I'm not, weirded out or thrown off by the fact that the Braves and Phillies are as good as they are, but I am a little concerned of what I've seen from the Washington Nationals this year. The New York Mets, listen, they're their own story right now. They're going to try to salvage everything they possibly can to try to build towards next season. But the Washington Nationals may be on their way down. And this is the first time that I've ever put this out there, and it's not that anybody hasn't talked about it before, but it's the first time that I'm starting to have doubts about the future of the Washington Nationals, because this has been a team for a long time, has been very good, and was expected to be good for another series of years, not just because of Harper and Strasburg and Scherzer, but guys like Anthony Rendon, guys like Adam Eaton, guys like Trey Turner were supposed to be impactful for this team and expected to keep it going when the potential for a loss of a guy like Bryce Harper was there. The possibility that Daniel Murphy might not be back next year. The possibility that Gio Gonzalez, who has been a very good pitcher, and by the way, since he was acquired from the Oakland Athletics and signed to a 6-year contract extension, has been a very valuable contract for the Washington Nationals. You're looking at players that will not be there next year, but I'm trying to get a sense of what I'm looking at. What I'm looking at from the manager, his body language. And I think Davey Martinez is a guy that was expected to be a successful Major League manager, and he still might be. But he's in a spot where he's not necessarily dealing with things that aren't going right for the Washington Nationals the best way possible. And let's be serious. When you have a Major League manager that's managing a team that's struggling or managing a team that's underachieving, he's going to be a lot more under the microscope. And in the world of national media, it's not so much about what media market the team that you're managing happens to be. It's not just because it's New York, Boston, Philadelphia, LA, you're going to get more media attention. You're getting a lot more attention from the national media landscape because it's there. And David Martinez is going to be looked at and say, hey, what happened in 2018 when Dusty Baker was there for 2 seasons and took the team to the playoffs? Matt Williams took the team to the playoffs. Davey Johnson took the team to the playoffs. These are all teams that won the National League East. And with what you could expect to be just as good of a team, why are the Washington Nationals the way that they are? Now, their bullpen has struggled. I think there's been a little bit of some, flipping out and kind of overreaction and meltdowns in regards to the front office and the bullpen. You got Mike Rizzo pretty much singling out Brandon Kinsler and Sean Kelly, thinking that those guys have to go when they were both pitching very well. Was that the right decision? Was that the wrong decision? We'll find out. But you're seeing the Nationals in a position where they can't hold the lead late. Ryan Madsen gives up the ultimate grand slam to David Vogt the other day with the team up 3-0 and 2 outs in the 9th inning. They're in a tough situation, not just for this year, but going forward. And I do think there's going to be some concern about whether the Washington Nationals can get back on track next year as we hit what's going to be probably the quarter point of the Passball Show, the Cuckoo Clock, the whole thing. Last point I'm going to make about the Nationals, there's got to be some concern about this team being able to fortify itself going forward. If there's no Harper next year, where do they pivot towards? Do they look to build on Adam Eaton and Trey Turner-like players to build around Anthony Rendon? Juan Soto obviously has been outstanding this year. He's a guy that's going to be part of the future. what are they looking to do to stay at this level? Max Scherzer, and I know Steven Strasburg's been hurt, but pitchers like that are meant to win. They're not going to be part of a rebuild. So you look at a team that has been underwhelming this year, and I understand they're still a little bit over 500. I understand that they're still in a very good position, and if they could go on a run, they could certainly be in the race, at least for the NL wild card, where there seems to be a handful of teams there, as opposed to the American League, where you look at the Yankees, you look at the Athletics, and you really look at the Mariners as being the only team that has a chance to catch either one of those two teams. And the Nationals, if they want to salvage anything out of this season, go on a little bit of a run. But if not, this is a lost season, but this lost season could be the start of the decline of a franchise that has been very successful over the past 7 years or so. Moving on, American League East. A lot of attention has been brought to the Boston Red Sox, and a lot of it that they've brought upon themselves with their outstanding record, sitting over 50 games, over 500, in a ridiculous position, pushing the 2001 Mariners, pushing the 98 Yankees for the most regular season wins, which I think they can get if they keep playing at the pace that they're playing at right now. But you look at the New York Yankees, who are about 30 games over 500, and certainly nothing to be ashamed of. They've dealt with some injuries, but who hasn't in Major League Baseball? Who hasn't in professional sports? You have to set yourself from, an adversity standpoint to be able to have players that could step in and perform at a high level. The Yankees, since the All-Star break, have been a little over 500. They haven't played at that, ridiculous pace that they set to start the season, which has allowed the Boston Red Sox to pull away. So if you ask people in the Yankees media, if you ask Yankees fans, the expectation right now is for them to set themselves up for a wild card game and an appearance in a winner-take-all scenario. Now, I think about the winner-take-all scenario. Of course, we're referring to the wild cards that exist in the American League and the National League, and the fact that after the season is over, two teams that didn't win their division with the best records in their respective leagues play one game to go forward. And, the basics of it, and I'm sorry for oversimplifying it sometimes, which I tend to do on this show, but, the fact that it is a winner-take-all, it's the equivalent of a fifth game, which we see in the Division Series and we saw in the American and National League Championship Series up through 1985. Up through 1984, I apologize. 1985 was the first year. It was best of 7, and the Toronto Blue Jays ended up losing in 7 games to the Kansas City Royals when they were up through 5 games. So if that platform had still stayed the same, it would have been the Toronto Blue Jays in the World Series in 1985. But the fact that it is set to be the equivalent of a fifth game, or the equivalent of a 7th game, it really means, number one, all hands on deck, but number two, so many different things could happen. There's so many different variables that are involved in one game. And if you're a Yankees fan and you're trying to think past the American League wildcard game, all you have to do is just go back almost a calendar year. When the Yankees were in a wild card situation, they won the AL wild card. They were hosting the Minnesota Twins. The game was being played at Yankee Stadium. And there's very few people outside of the people that played for the Minnesota Twins and the fans of the Minnesota Twins that would think or wouldn't think that the Yankees were the better team. Now what happened? Luis Severino ends up having one of his worst games as a Yankee. He has to get pulled in the first inning. The Twins get off to a nice lead. And sometimes, a game like that can get out of hand the wrong way. And if the Twins had ended up winning that game, let's say 12-6 or something like that, on the strength of being able to blow out Luis Severino and the Yankees bullpen, you can make the case that the better team didn't win. If the Yankees and Twins were set up to be in a 5-game series, odds are the Yankees would have a better chance of winning a 5-game series than a 1-game series. Better chance of winning a 7-game series than a 1-game series. So that's the fear that you have to have if you're covering the Yankees. That's the fear that you have to have if you're a New York Yankee fan. But what you have on your side is essentially 6 weeks to prepare. So the big game, which we obviously start talking about in football with preseason going on now and the game's about to start the first week of September, the big game for the Yankees is that wild card game as they're getting prepared to face either the Oakland Athletics or the Seattle Mariners, or maybe even the Houston Astros. But once again, it's a winner-take-all scenario, so the better team doesn't always win the deciding game. The better team could win, 4 out of 7 or 3 out of 5, and a lot of times that happens. But once it gets to that deciding game, and obviously in a one-game playoff, it's one game that decides whether you go to the next round. It's gonna be tough. The Yankees can set their pitching rotation up the best way they can, and they benefit, I believe. And you may disagree with me. You can tell me if you disagree. That's fine. But if you look at the Yankees as they set themselves up to play the Boston Red Sox the final 3 games of the season, they would be best suited to not pitch any pitcher that they would consider pitching in a postseason series. In other words, Luis Severino, Masahiro Tanaka, Jay Happ, Lance Lynn. I would make sure that none of those guys pitch against the Boston Red Sox. And obviously you set up the pitcher that you want in the wild card game, whether it's Masahiro Tanaka, whether Luis Severino straightens himself out, whether you decide to go to Jay Happ because, from a matchup standpoint, you feel like there's a lot of left-hand hitters on the opponent, whether it's Oakland or Seattle or Houston, whatever your decision ends up being, you make sure you don't pitch those pitchers against Boston. You make sure, for the most part, that you're resting your offensive players in those last 3 games. You want to make sure that your best 1 through 9 is ready, which will obviously include Aaron Judge, which will obviously include Gary Sanchez. Maybe you figure out what you want to do at first base. Is Greg Bird going to be the answer if you're getting ready for a deep postseason? Should you go with Neil Walker? Should you use a little bit of Luke Voigt? Should you work some things around to maybe play certain matchups? But from that perspective, the Yankees are setting themselves up, obviously, for a one-game winner-take-all scenario, but to win that game, which will be expected, so if the Yankees end up losing a wild card game, will certainly be a disappointment for them in the season, but the expectation to win the wild card game and get themselves into a best-of-5 series against the Boston Red Sox. And this is where I think things will shift if the Yankees are able to get through this wild card game. And trust me, Michael, I agree that Oakland is going to be a big problem. I mean, they have a very good balanced team. I like their pitching, which nobody really talks about. It's kept them into a lot of games. Obviously, they stockpile guys in that bullpen, whether it's Juris Familia, Fernando Rodney. And I think this is a legitimate team. And one point that I was going to make that I'll back up off of what you just brought up, Mike, is the Oakland Athletics and the Seattle Mariners, even for that matter, are much better teams than what the Minnesota Twins were in 2017. And it's not to take anything away from either team. It's not to take anything away from the Minnesota Twins, who gave their best. They certainly, from a talent standpoint, just don't have what Oakland has this year, and don't have what Seattle has this year. So I think from that perspective, just getting past that one-game wild card is going to be tougher for the Yankees than it was last year. But let's go hypothetical here. And let's say that the Yankees could find a way. They got 6 weeks to prepare. They make sure they get all their players healthy. Maybe Oakland and Seattle's got to sweat it out. Maybe it comes down to the last couple of games where they're hoping to win to get in and follow any other team and scoreboard watching. And the Yankees probably don't have to do that. If the Yankees can get themselves their starting pitcher ready, whether it's Tanaka or Severino or whoever, to pitch that game, their 1 through 9 is ready. They end up rolling or winning past Oakland and moving on to the division series. They get to match themselves up against the best team in the American League, which is the Boston Red Sox. And here's where I think things will change a little bit, because the Yankees can get themselves through the tough part, through the wild card game, the winner take all, anything can happen, the whole thing. The onus and the pressure is going to be on the Boston Red Sox for a number of reasons. Number one, the Red Sox have gotten themselves in this position 2 straight years. They've won the American League East and lost in the divisional round. Pretty similar to what the Washington Nationals have done in 4 of the last 7 years. Number 2, the Red Sox, everything that they accomplished in the regular season, whether they win 115 games, whether they somehow win 120, whether they win every single game in a regular season to finish the year, none of that's going to matter. And you obviously have the rivalry between the Red Sox and the Yankees. You obviously have the fact that those teams don't like each other, but also they both raise their game when they're facing each other. So all of a sudden you're looking at a best-of-5 series, and it's not the Red Sox in their 115 or however many wins they have in 2018 against the Yankees in their wild card appearance. It's a best out of 5 between two teams that, up to a certain point, match up well against each other. You could talk about the advantage that the Boston Red Sox have in regards to starting pitching. You could talk about the advantage that the Boston Red Sox have with J.D. Martinez and Mookie Betts. And by the way, you're talking about February 26th, and the reason I bring that date up, that's the day that the Boston Red Sox signed J.D. Martinez. And you look at J.D. Martinez hitting .333, leading the league in home runs, and runs batted in, and hits. And this is a guy that could have been had by anybody up through February 26th. It was almost forced on the Boston Red Sox as part of a narrative that was thrown in there by the media, saying that the Red Sox missed David Ortiz, could really use this guy's bat. It shouldn't matter whether there's an outfield position for him or not. The Boston Red Sox should go and sign him. It's almost like there was some sort of cohesive effort to say, hey, this player is not signed. Make sure the Boston Red Sox bring him in because they need him. They could use this guy. It's almost like the Red Sox had to be convinced to add themselves J.D. Martinez. Look at what Martinez has done for that team, and also look at where the Red Sox could possibly be or been if Martinez was not on that roster, if they had not signed him to that contract. I like Betts. I like Benintendi. I like Xander Bogaerts. I think they have a very good offensive team, one that's superior to the Yankees. The Yankees have the advantage in regards to the bullpen. But the main point that I'm making here is once the postseason starts, anything that happened in a regular season does not really matter. The Boston Red Sox can look at themselves in the mirrors, and the majority of the players that are on that team, not everybody, but a good amount of the players who are on that team were on the team in 2017, were on the team in 2016, when the Red Sox won the American League East and ended up losing in the first round. Everything that you built towards to strive to win a particular division no longer matters once you're in the postseason. And if the Red Sox and the Yankees are matched up, which is all likelihood, and I'm playing conventional wisdom here, obviously what I just talked about is the possibility that Oakland or Seattle, if they end up getting the other wild card, could potentially beat the Yankees. And my points would be muted at this point. But if the Yankees and Red Sox are playing in a divisional round, best of 5, nothing that the Boston Red Sox accomplished this season matters. It doesn't matter how many wins they have. It's going to be more pressure on the Red Sox to win than it is the Yankees. Now, if the Red Sox win it in 3 games, you can talk about what didn't work for the Yankees. Yankees fans will probably call out Aaron Boone, just like New York fans do to every single manager and coach that they have, whether it's their fault or not. But the pressure is going to be on the Red Sox. Because if the Red Sox don't get past the first round with the team that they got this year, with the run that they've been on this year, with the amount of wins that they'll finish or are likely to finish in a regular season with this year, it's going to be a huge failure. Not a failure to a point where Alex Cora is going to lose his job, but you're looking at the 2001 Seattle Mariners, a team that won the most games in any regular season in Major League Baseball history, but couldn't get to the World Series. The expectation with this Boston Red Sox team of where it's set right now is to win the World Series. Not to just win the American League East, not to bow out in the first round, not to get to the American League Championship Series, not to get to the World Series, but to win the whole thing, because this is the best team in baseball that we've seen on the field record-wise and perception-wise this year. But Yankees Red Sox, if that happens to be first round division series, it's going to be a ton of pressure on the Red Sox. And the Yankees, if they don't win that series, you could consider the season a disappointment. But you look on the other side and you say, hey, this Boston Red Sox team was that dominant during the regular season, continue that dominance into the postseason. But the pressure will shift to Boston if it's a best-of-5 series between the Yankees and the Red Sox. Once again, John Pielli, Pass Ball Show. Glad to be with you. I do want to shift into football a little bit. Next topic I want to talk about, because this is something that I thought about, was analyzing. And a lot of times, my analysis will be right on par with that of a lot of other talk show hosts. And when that's the case, I feel the need to not repeat what I hear on the air, what I see on TV. I don't think I'm really contributing anything if I'm just repeating the same stuff that other people say. But I was thinking deep about the New York Jets and their quarterback situation. Obviously, they have a little bit of a strength of riches. They have not just Sam Darnold, who they selected with the 3rd overall pick. And if you think about things about a year ago, you would think that the Jets fans would want to suck for Sam to get this guy with the number 1 overall pick. They somehow got him with the number 3 pick by trading up with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, what stands out to me about this is obviously you bring in Teddy Bridgewater, who you hope that his legs hold up. Josh McCown was there. He did a reasonable job for them last year, warranted of bringing him back. So the Jets don't have to play Sam Darnold if they don't want to. Now I was going to ask this to my to Jet fans, and obviously, you know, my affiliation is neither with the Jets nor the Giants, but you know, what comes into evaluating whether a first-year quarterback or a rookie quarterback should start week 1? A lot of it has to do with his mental approach, his readiness to play, whether you think this is a team that could benefit with him starting right away. But also, you got to factor in the team that's built around him. The skill players. Are there good enough skill players that you're going to be able to get the most out of this young quarterback? Is he going to, you know, throw regular passes and have the ball be dropped because the receivers aren't any good? Is he going to hand the ball to a running back that, you know, couldn't get past an open hole? The offensive line. Do you have a strong enough offensive line to support this quarterback? Look at what happened in Indianapolis with Andrew Luck. He started right away. That offensive line deteriorated year after year and ended up ruining the guy's career. So the Jets, as they're constructed, you look at their left tackle, you look at their center, you look at the 5 cohesive members, or what's supposed to be the cohesive members of that offensive line, and you may decide that they're good enough to play. So you're good enough to use the 5 offensive linemen you have, and you made the decision that you think that this team, the offensive line, the way it's set up, he's good enough for Sam Darnold to start opening day. Here's what I have not heard, and here's what needs to be brought up. Injuries in the National Football League happen all the time. We could bring up the ACL list, which is going to keep growing. Every single preseason game, every single practice, you're going to have a number of players, some of them that are pretty highly regarded, are going to be out for the season. Their teams are going to forget about them, throw them on the IR, and make believe that they never exist. It doesn't matter how good that player is. It doesn't matter how much they've accomplished in their career. When you tear an ACL, your team can give a blessed shit about it. So, we can talk about minor injuries and how they can impact the potential offensive line. If your offensive line is strong, but your backups are not really suited, if your backup left tackle is, you know, leaps and bounds below the strength and the quality of your starting left tackle, then that's going to be a big deal if Sam Darnold is playing and your left tackle gets hurt. If you're bringing in your backup players and they are leaps and bounds inferior to the players that you're starting the season with, you're putting your quarterback at risk of getting hurt. And I think that's something that should be considered. And as the Jets are thinking about this decision of who they want to start in week 1 for their quarterback, they should evaluate the next couple weeks of their preseason games for a number of reasons, but most importantly, to evaluate who's going to be my starting left tackle if my left tackle is hurt. Where's my backup offensive lineman and where do they rank? Do I feel confident enough that I can use a unit or a couple backup offensive linemen that I have on this roster to be able to protect Sam Darnold if he's going to start for me week 1, if he's going to still be starting for me in week 7? And you could say, hey, it's great to build a good offensive line, but it's just as important to have quality backups. We understand the salary cap the way it's constructed in the National Football League. You can't just pay players to sit on the bench. You can't afford to put that salary towards players that aren't going to be playing. You just don't have enough money. The budget isn't set up that way that you could overpay to make sure that you're fortified at each one of your important positions. So if you don't have the talent on your backup offensive lineman, then it may make a lot more sense for the Jets to consider waiting to start Sam Darnold. He's going to be the quarterback of the future. There's nothing that he's going to do on the sidelines that is going to make him any less of a candidate to be the starting quarterback going forward. In fact, he can probably learn a couple things. He may be the best game manager in the world. He may not need to work on the offense. He may not need to get any better. But he's going to get better if he sits. And that risk of injury should be different from each team. Each team is set up a certain way. You could look at it and say that, one team may have more of an advantage because their offensive linemen, their cohesive unit, the way it's set up, is that strong? Or is that set up and ready for them to go? Okay, I'm all right with that. And he talked about another team that has a rookie quarterback that just may not necessarily have the offensive lineman at this very moment, so they may not be suited to start that quarterback. But I do think the backups are just as important. The backups have not been considered, and I understand teams are evaluating this. The biggest thing in the National Football League during preseason, which we all understand takes a little too long, and for those that are foaming at the mouth for the start of the NFL season, I understand that it goes a little too long. But these are important things that need to be evaluated. These are important things that need to be discussed and thought about in each one of the 32 National Football League teams. They're trying to fortify a 53-man roster. They're trying to put together the 53 best players that they have. Maybe they exist within the group of the 100 or so that come to training camp. Maybe there's a couple that they have to bring in from outside. But they've got to look at each one of their positions and say, hey, who is my backup? Who am I going to go to if my starting player tears his ACL, is out for the season, and all of a sudden the organization decides to forget that they ever exist? These are all things that got to be considered. And these are all things that are studied over the course of the 4-week NFL preseason. And teams are going to use those decisions to say, hey, how are we fortified from a 53-man roster standpoint to determine who should start at every one of these positions. And especially if I'm looking to start a rookie at quarterback where there's doubts about whether that team is ready to win this year. So if I'm the Jets, I'm going to use the basis of my decision of whether I'm going to start Sam Darnold opening week over how strong my offensive line is set. So if my offensive line does not have the proper backups, that's going to factor in my decision over whether I'm going to start. And, you can talk about it. Mike's brought this up, and thanks. I appreciate the comments, Michael. The fact that you have a couple veterans there, McCown and Bridgewater. And listen, Bridgewater isn't necessarily a veteran. It's not that he's been around forever, but he's been around this league a lot. I know the last 2 years he's been hurt. He almost had, one of his legs amputated because of the severity of his injuries. But to have that depth and have veterans that know this offense, that know how to play in the National Football League, make it easier for you to rest a guy that you know is going to be your future. But if you don't have a strong offensive line, and not only that, if you don't have strong backups that are set up to put yourself in a position to replace a good quarterback or a good lineman with a decent lineman, then I'd consider starting a veteran week number 1. Once again, this is the Passball Show. John Pielli here, brought to you, of course, by johnpielli.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. And thinking about a couple things, we're going to move ourselves into our Nobody's Listening segment of the program. So let's get that music playing. It's the Passball Show. John Pielli here, brought to you first right now. And what we're going to talk about today, as it has some relation to sports, mostly we talk about it in the Nobody's Listening segment, something that has no relation to sports at all. And I understand that we live in a world where people are very sports-centric. But I was thinking the other day about sports betting and how it's, an exciting thing for people that love sports and to go out there to a typical sports book and be able to spend a reasonable amount of money, putting some money on some teams, some money on some odds, and being able to potentially win off of it. And I was trying to evaluate the other day, what do I think is the best sport to bet on? Now, the most popular sport to bet on, obviously, is the National Football League and the NFL. You can place bets on almost any other sport that you want. You can bet on hockey if you like. You can bet on tennis if you want. But I was thinking about the PGA tournament last week, one of golf's 4 majors, of course, and the odds that were set on Brooks Koepka ends up winning the tournament, and Brooks Koepka's odds to win were 18-1. You look at Adam Scott, who ended up finishing 3rd. His odds were 100-1. So if you're looking at one player winning an entire major tournament, it's very easy, to understand that there's a tremendous amount of odds against any one player winning. And I remember years ago we used to talk about Tiger Woods and his dominance, and obviously he ends up finishing 2nd at the PGA. Ratings end up doubling. I get it. I understand why. Whether people like Tiger or not, he's polarizing enough that people want to see how he's doing. People want to see if he can do it. Can he win another major? So the fact that he was in contention for the British Open and he ends up finishing 2nd in the PGA Championship, is obviously something great to draw towards, the front, and that's why ratings were as good as they were. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about, golf, I think you could increase the interest in golf if you made betting more of a part of it. And think about it. Let's say, if you had $100 to spare, and I don't know if you do. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you had $10 to spare and you want to throw that $10 on one player, you'd be playing, you take a long shot, somebody that's like, 150-1, and if for some reason that player wins, it's like winning the lottery. But I think if you spread some bets out over the course of the field at a major golf tournament, first of all, it makes it more intriguing. You're going to want to watch for a couple more reasons than just whatever interest you have in a sport of golf. But the fact that you put some money down on it, I think those are more sound investments than betting on some other sports. You got point spreads that you got to deal with in the National Football League, which make it tough from week to week. You may have the Patriots playing the Browns, and you may understand from a conventionalistic standpoint that 99 times out of 100, the New England Patriots are going to beat the Cleveland Browns, but that's not the issue. You got to deal with the point spread. If the Patriots are favored by 14 points or favored by 20 points, then you're talking about a handicap that's set up for each individual team. It's like the Browns are given 14 points or given 20 points to start the game. And all the Patriots are trying to do is win. So they're not trying to cover the spread. If you're betting on a Patriots, you're hoping that the Patriots cover the spread, hypothetically. But the Patriots are looking to win the game. They're not looking to win the game by 21 points because the point spread is 20. So when you're looking at point spreads as they apply to other sports, it makes betting on the games a little more difficult because you got a handicap set up against, whatever team that you think or you look at or the odds makers consider the favorite to win the game. If you're betting on golf, you're taking the payout based off of whoever wins. And I understand it's an educated guess. So the odds could get to the point where maybe they're 5-1 or 4-1. Odds are they won't get any more narrow than that unless it's Tiger Woods in his prime. If Tiger Woods is out there winning every major, then sure, there's going to be compound odds on Tiger Woods winning. And talking about earlier, when I was talking about when Tiger was at his best, and it was Tiger Woods against the field, it just showed the impact that the guy had on this individual sport. How he was that good that people would say, is Tiger Woods going to win the tournament, or any of the other 100 or so players playing in this particular tournament going to win? And people would still side with Tiger. But we don't have a player in golf that's like that. Brooks Koepka has done a great job. He's won 3 of the last 7 majors. He's certainly considered at this point probably the best player in the sport. But you have a lot of other players that are up there. The Jordan Spieths of the world, the Zach Johnsons of the world. Some players that play well in just about every tournament and could be considered a reasonable favorite to win any single tournament. There isn't that bona fide favorite that exists in the world of golf now. And it's a shame because Brooks Koepka has gone on a very good run. Brooks Koepka has been the best golfer in the last almost 2 calendar years and isn't getting the credit that he deserves for it. But back to what we're talking about in regards to sports betting and odds. I think more people should throw some money if you're interested, if you like golf. Obviously, if you don't like golf, if you have no interest in even paying attention to it, this wouldn't apply to you. But let's say if you have an extra $50, even an extra $20, and you want to put $5 on 4 players, you're talking about some very good, some very good odds that are going to pay in your favor if any one of those players end up winning. And I think it's much more interesting and much more fun, and maybe potentially, and I understand that you bet on anything, it's like a lottery ticket. So you look at it and you think, hey, I'm playing with some money that at least is going towards something, and I'm being that's being judged by what happens on the field. Either the player is going to win or he's not going to win. There's no handicaps involved. There's no point spreads. So I would expect to see over the course of the next couple of years, and it's a shame that the golf major season is over, but I would expect to see more money being bet, especially as we're talking about sports betting being legal in most states, probably every state pretty soon. And I think it's gonna, it's gonna be pretty cool to see. Quick recap of the show today: NL East, Braves and Phillies. We talked about why these teams are where they are, and they're both very good young teams. I could have predicted each one of those teams being solid for last season, and they weren't. The Washington Nationals fall, the Mets becoming one of the worst teams in the league have kind of opened the door for both of those teams. You got the Yankees, who are pretty much playing 6 weeks to get ready for one game for the wild card. It's not going to be easy, but if they somehow get past that, I'll tell you, the pressure is going to be on the Boston Red Sox in the division series. Sam Darnold, the reason that you sit him week 1 could come down to the backup offensive lineman on the New York Jets roster. And finally, might be time for people that like to bet on sports, people that are excited about sports betting becoming legal in New Jersey and a lot of other states. Maybe it's time to put some money down on the sport of golf. We'll be back with you maybe tomorrow. We'll see whatever's going on in the world of baseball, sports, and unifying America. This is the Passball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com, as well as St. Aloysius Church and School in Jackson, New Jersey. Just a real quick, Mike, I just want to let you know I agree with your points in regards to the quarterbacks. And you have a veteran there. You don't want to risk your young quarterback getting hurt. And it kind of goes back to my point I was saying, not just make sure that you have a fortified offensive line, but make sure that you have players that are solid enough that can step in and still give you a chance to stay healthy and not risk injury if one of your offensive linemen is out. We'll be back with you once again. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.